Hi there. This is Greg McAfee. I wanted to talk today about restless leg syndrome. This is a condition that I was diagnosed with when I was 19 or 20 years old back in like 1993 or 1994 at Mass General Hospital in Boston. I did a couple sleep studies, saw a neurologist. What was his name? Can't remember it, but fairly highly respected. Guy up there in medicine. Anyways, I was also diagnosed with bruxism, which is grinding of your teeth, and I was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and bipolar depression, and a host of other things. I was just having a real difficult time: chronic fatigue, hypersomnia. My life has been marred by just a lot of poorly understood chronic conditions. But today I want to focus specifically on restless leg syndrome. Okay, so God, I guess I should put on my glasses because I took notes and I can't read anything without them. From a distance anyways, and I don't want to be like, Okay, so restless leg syndrome. Well, it's a global problem, but it's seems to be have higher prevalence or higher more people are have issues with this condition in North America and Europe, which is interesting. But in the United States, it depends on diagnostic criteria and symptoms and such. But I guess estimates it's anywhere from 5 to 15% of the American population today has it, whereas back in the early 1990s, it was really poorly understood, and there were really poor diagnostics, poor treatments. I saw a sleep specialist about a year ago at Loveless Hospital in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Well, at a clinic affiliated with Loveless. And he laughed at a couple of the treatments I took, like Cinemet, which was carbidopa levodopa mix. He's like, they prescribed you that? I'm like, dude, it was 1993. But anyways, none of my treatments have ever been effective in relieving my symptoms with restless leg syndrome, or a variety of conditions. It's our for various chronic conditions. We have just really, really poor treatments and poor understanding of the causes of these conditions, It's just interesting. And restless leg syndrome is believed to be a neurologically based condition where there is, well, I'll get into a little bit more of that in a little detail but later. But I want to say that the symptoms of restless leg syndrome were first recognized in the 17th century, in 1672. By Sir Thomas Willis in Britain, and he documented it, and he called it, I guess, an unquietness in the legs. That's interesting, huh? 1672. Well, it should be noted that by 1672, there was a lot of global movement on the seas, right? That in 1580, Roanoke was established in Virginia as the first colony in the United States, but it failed. And then in 1620 is when Plymouth was founded, which obviously was a little bit more successful. And then after that was Boston and such. And by 1672, when Sir Thomas Willis had noted an unquietness in the legs, there were several colonies in the New England, northeastern, or in the Americas, right? But particularly that New England, New York region, right? The northeastern of the United States areas. Anyways, so an interesting thing about pathogens is that and pathogens include bacteria, fungi, viruses, parasites. Like, it was funny. I mean, like, undeniably, the Europeans, when they colonized the Americas, they brought so many diseases like smallpox and stuff to the Americas and just wreaked havoc on the indigenous populations with these diseases where they did not have the immune system to battle them, right? And then like there's the nefarious thing of where they intentionally introduced infected blankets and then, gave them to the indigenous populations for them to use and where they became sick. Wow. Intentionally making somebody sick with an infection. Wow, that's beyond unethical. You would think in 2024, we would be beyond that, right? That we would have a higher level of ethics today, right? You would think. Anyways, let's fast forward to World War II, or just after World War II. In Sweden, there's a neurologist. His name was Ekbom. What was it? Carl Axel Ekbom. And I think it was around 1946 when he noted restless leg syndrome, and he was the first, I believe, to establish it as a neurologically based condition. And he, what's really interesting is that, well, one of the potential symptoms of restless leg syndrome is this feeling of creepy crawly things on your legs, right? And so you just have this urge to move, right? That's interesting, huh? Well, another interesting thing is that prior to, I believe the start of World War II, I don't know, is in the late 1930s, or somewhere around the cusp of the start of World War II. Well, Ekbom, Dr. Ekbom, also is associated with making delusional parasitosis a medical condition, but this one being psychiatric in nature rather than neurologically based in nature. Now, both of these conditions, interestingly, are associated with creepy crawly sensations on the skin. But you can't actually see anything there, huh? Isn't that interesting? Does that make you pause and think? Like, I wonder what's going on there. That's an interesting relationship and an interesting overlap. So, another thing about restless leg syndrome is that, one gets relief from movement, right? That's why it's restless leg, right? And so you're moving around and stuff, and it's typically worse at night in nocturnal hours, right? Oh, that's another interesting thing, right? And so, could we have restless leg syndrome? Completely wrong. Is modern medicine really as ignorant as Dr. Ekbom was in Sweden back in the World War II era? I don't think so. I think modern medicine is being disingenuous with us because I figured this out, and I'm not a genius. And while I do have a clinical background, I don't have a medical background. But I've connected the dots here. So, some of the factors that are associated with a person having restless leg syndrome is genetic predisposition. It runs in families. People of European ancestry are more susceptible than other people. There are lower rates of it in Asia and Africa. Then there's it's associated with iron deficiency, and it's associated with obesity and smoking. Now, on top of iron deficiency, it's associated with various other medical conditions, and kidney issues, peripheral neuropathy. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time getting my mouth around words. Pregnancy makes you more vulnerable. Interesting, huh? So could the unborn fetus actually... It's not going to have a very developed immune system, is it? And Parkinson's disorder, well, that's associated with restless leg syndrome. Makes sense. Diabetes. Rheumatoid arthritis. Interesting. Fibromyalgia. Multiple sclerosis. stroke. So all these medical conditions, and then it's also associated with depression and anxiety and other mental health conditions as well. Strongly associated. So, could we have the cause to it all wrong? That we don't have some sort of neurologically based disruption that Dr. Ekbom suggested back in the World War II era for either delusional parasitosis or restless leg syndrome. But could there actually be a pathogenic cause? Now, if there could be a pathogenic cause and somebody actually proved the pathogenic cause, then that would revolutionize medicine and science today, right? Or could people be so invested in the status quo in our current broken medical model that such a person with such insights would be ostracized and outcasted and stripped of everything? I don't know. It's an interesting concept there. There's an interesting thing about like parasitic worms and our visual processing system, right? As amazing as human eyesight is, like we rely on it tons because our eyesight is so developed. It's incredible. It's really remarkable. But it also has limitations. It doesn't process the entire light spectrum, right? So there are things that have that fall that are really real, but we don't actually see them with our own two eyes or even with glasses, right? So parasites are you can check this with any animal. And how they choose a host and how they take advantage of various hosts, and they're remarkably adaptive. Like these things repopulate really quickly. They go through genetic mutations and then they change and adapt and evolve, and it's like bam, 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 right? They're changing quick. Like they'll go through tons of generations really quickly, whereas it takes us 20, 30, 40 years to go through a generation, right? As human beings. So our evolution process is much slower. Our adaptive process is much slower. But interestingly, given that we are so reliant on our visual processing, but it has limitations and blind spots, then and that parasites are known to exploit their host vulnerabilities. Well, our over-reliance and confidence on our visual processing, could that have been evolutionarily taken advantage of, exploited? That could nature have said, well, if people can't see it, then we're going to be more effective in infecting people, right? Making people our hosts. Well, that's quite the concept, huh? And so, and are there other known worms like nematodes or parasitic worms or out there that are visually elusive? Yeah, there are. You can look at C. elegans as one prime example, which is a nematode, which is a roundworm. And it's highly studied in science, because it's a fascinating thing. It has a very, anyways, I just want to establish precedent that there are visually elusive organisms within our environments. Okay? So why not parasitic? And given how remarkably adaptive and evolved parasites are, and how successful they've been for 300 million years, then wouldn't it? The question for me would be not if there are parasites that have evolved to evade our visual processing abilities, but question would be like, well, why wouldn't there be? Like, it only makes sense that these organisms would have evolved to exploit our over-reliance on eyesight. And interestingly, we don't pay much attention to a lot of our other senses, especially touch. That's a real undervalued sense, and it's so critical. You know, the human need for connection and touch, and it's a critical sense that we undervalue today in 2024. And I wonder why that is. And have you ever had it really intense itching in a place, but you look and you don't actually see anything there? I'm like, well, that's weird. Could it be from dysregulated dopamine, or could there be another reason? And right now I got an itch right there. Sorry. And so we go back to restless leg syndrome, where many people who have the condition, when they're lying in bed at night and they have insomnia and they can't sleep, and they have an underlying dysregulated dopamine system too. But they get these creepy crawly sensations on their legs. A lot of people, well, isn't that interesting? But you don't see anything there. Huh. Well, could you see something there if you ran the right experiments, huh? And could you possibly collect something that feels weird in, say, water, and then with the right lighting, look into the water with a microscope or a camera with a high magnification, like with a macro lens or something, and actually identify organisms? Worms. Oh, jeez, man, that'd be interesting. Or how about collect them in hydrogen peroxide? Because hydrogen peroxide, well, it would eat at their cellular bodies, so it would make them, it would mess up their skin and probably make them a little bit more easy to identify. So just little tools, man. You might want to run your own studies, your own little research, because I wouldn't trust medicine today. I wouldn't trust science today, because much of it's crap. And so, let's see, what else did I write for notes? And other points that I want to make. So, and go back that you get relief from movement. Well, if there are invisible or transparent or translucent, whatever word you want to use, worms, something that has evolved to evade our visual processing system, that are parasitic, and they could actually be in our home environments. Well, if you have restless leg and you're moving around and you're and you're pacing all the time, well, wouldn't that be an adaptive response? Because wouldn't these worms that are on the ground have a hard time crawling up onto your feet and onto your legs if you're always moving around? Well, that's interesting. And why do these symptoms get worse when you sit in one place and lie down or go to bed? Huh, that's interesting as well. And then I wanted to make another point was, I should have taken better notes, people. And so it's interesting that since pathogens, to go back on the history of this, that the Americas were colonized as early as the late 1500s, right? Or attempted to. Well, there was a lot of travel across the Atlantic from, North America to Europe, particularly Britain and France and Spain, right? Italy. And so, and so could there have been various parasites that were endemic or natural to North America that really eluded European travelers at the time, or settlers, people settling in the United States? And then if they did get infected by these visually elusive parasites, then if they returned back to Europe, right, as a trader or merchant, or, for whatever reason, or maybe they didn't like the United States, right? Well, then they would have likely transmitted those parasites over to Europe. These pathogens, the thing with global trade and travel today is that pathogens don't respect our international borders, right? And so we opened up Pandora's box by discovering new lands and new continents, right? And people moving and animals moving on different continents and countries, and they don't care about our international borders. They don't care about our seas if we take them with us, right? Huh. And so, so it's interesting that it was, a couple generations after the Americas were being settled by Britain that Sir Thomas Willis was noting symptoms of restless leg syndrome. Another interesting thing is that ekbom, well, I already mentioned that he was in the World War II era where he made delusional parasitosis first a psychiatric condition with creepy crawly sensations on the skin that aren't there. And then later, post-World War II, he's associated with making restless leg syndrome, a neurologically based condition. Well, I think he genuinely felt that he was right and he was correct, but what if he was completely wrong? And what if medicine has found out since then that he was completely wrong and that it has these conditions have pathogenic causes that we deny? Huh. That would be remarkable, huh? And so could modern medicine, could our governments, could we be being lied to? And are our medical diagnostics valid? Are they comprehensive? Do all doctors, are they even aware of what's really going on? Like who's in the in crowd, who isn't? Who knows? Because I've proven the pathogenic cause. If you can look at my some of my videos on YouTube, that's subjectively observed was the handle, but I'm locked out of that account, so I can't post there right now. I also have some Rumble videos on Matchbox Sign, and then some Facebook stuff. And anyways, I find it interesting that this prevalence rates are. That the occurrence of restless leg syndrome is higher among European descent, people of European white descent, right? And then women are a higher proportion, and then pregnant women at the top of that, right? Well, it's when a woman's pregnant, she has her immune system taxed, right? Yeah, and the fetus is more vulnerable to infections, right? Yeah, so it makes sense. And then iron deficiencies, well, they're associated with all sorts of other parasitic infections, like hookworm, right? So why not this worm? Well, I don't know. That's a good question to ask. And then peripheral neuropathy, and Parkinson's, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis. I'm not going to do all the homework here for you, but all those conditions I just listed, you might want to see if any of their symptoms mirror parasitic symptoms. Go ahead and look at the parasites that are well known and studied and say, hey, do any of these conditions have symptoms that mirror chronic untreated parasitic infections? And if they do, well, I think you should really do your homework, ladies and gentlemen. I would do it for you, but I'm running out of time. I'm running out of health. I'm hitting the end of the road here. And then what else was there that I was going to say? Diabetes. Well, we have a diabetes epidemic in the United States and across the world, but largely in the United States. That we didn't have juvenile diabetes in the 50s, 1950s and 40s in the United States. We just didn't. But we do now. And chronic illness, all these conditions I just listed to you are chronic illnesses that are poorly understood. And most of them are highly stigmatized, why is that? And they're really poorly underfunded in terms of research. Why is that? And why do the causes of all these conditions elude when we have made so many amazing medical advancements? How could the causes of all these conditions elude doctors and scientists today. Huh. Do you buy that? When doctors say, well, we don't know what's going on with you. Do you buy that? Huh? I don't. I don't buy that at all. I think we've made remarkable advancements, and I think we're being lied to. I think we're being lied to our faces. I know we are. I know I have been with my symptoms. And so that brings us to the point of motivation. Okay? Well, why? What would be the motivation for the medical community to lie to us? Why would there be bad science and clinical practices out there being unchallenged? Well, that would mean our medical system and our scientific system would lack integrity. Well, that's pretty intense, huh? And could it be for financial reasons? Could it be for power reasons? Could it be because they don't want people to be aware that we have invisible parasitic worms out here in our environments that are seeking out certain people with either weaker immune systems or genetic predispositions, or they're pregnant, because there would be a mass hysteria. Well, that's another option. Or, the denial of the actual parasitic cause of these symptoms. Well, that would mean that you wouldn't have to actually cure the condition with anti-parasitic medications, right? Because then you could just treat the symptoms of the parasitic conditions, because most of these conditions don't actually kill you, not immediately. They just make your life miserable. And, and so, well, if we deny the parasitic cause, and then we can deny the anti-parasitic treatments, then we can just treat the symptoms as they arise, and then we'll get newer medications that maybe better treat the symptoms, and then you're just on the pharmacology merry-go-round of up and down, different medications, try something new, and then develop side effects from the medications and try something else. That's a huge business model. That's a great business model. That would make tons of money, So, everything indicates to me that I have proven the parasitic cause of my symptoms, which are visually elusive helminths or parasitic worms. I'm not unique, okay? I'm not unique. I'm in a unique position, but I'm not unique. I'm not special, all right? No, I'm just a victim like everybody else of our medical system, or our broken medical system that lacks integrity, it lacks accountability, it lacks effective treatments, or there are some effective treatments, but we are denied them, okay? And the wool is being pulled over our eyes. And I think everybody should demand answers and be like, hey, could there be a parasitic cause etiology to my poor health? People need to start asking that question. Could there be a parasitic cause to my poor health? All the conditions I listed, and then all the neurologically based conditions, and then there are all the mental health conditions that are treatment resistant, and most of these conditions are all associated with disrupted dopamine regulation. You know what else is associated with disrupted dopamine regulation? Illicit drug use. Or even Adderall, So, that's interesting, huh? And that we're dopamine junkies. Well, the people, whether it be from social media that we get like a dopamine hit from the likes, or be it from a drug we put in ourselves, or watching porn or something where we get a dopamine release, we are dopamine junkies because it feels good when we get a hit of dopamine, right? Well, maybe it makes the worms feel good too. So maybe the worms are attacking our dopamine systems. Maybe they're addicted to our dopamine systems, and that's why they target certain people. Food for thought. I really urge that various any scientists or doctors out there with integrity, that you start asking some stupid questions that we have been trained not to ask. And you start asking fundamental questions. and you start questioning the building blocks of science and medicine, because there are so many poor clinical practices and scientific principles that go unchallenged. And I'm sorry, but science doesn't work that way. When a system, when a medical system or a scientific system has integrity, then other people will publicly acknowledge things that I have been laying out, and be able to research it and study it and to challenge the existing things that are wrong. But we don't get that. Why is that? Could the system be broken? Could the system be profit-driven? Could the system actually not care about you specifically? Could you be sick when you don't need to be sick? Could there be effective treatments? Because modern medicine and treatments for parasites and other conditions have really developed a lot since the World War II era, I'll tell you that, especially since 1672, right? One last thing I want to add is that prior to World War II, the United States and other countries, we had a different medical approach. We approached medical problems in trying to understand the root causes of the problems and to solve and to cure illness rather than treat symptoms. Well, don't you think it's interesting that around World War II, that we moved to a medical system that was more symptom focused? And this is around the same time that ekbom pioneered restless leg syndrome as a neurological condition and delusional parasitosis as a psychiatric system. A lot of things add up for me, man. You really need to ask questions that most people are afraid to ask or won't even consider asking, because these questions are critical for the future of humanity, for the quality of your life, the quality of your family's lives, your children's lives, the next generation's lives. Because as long as the bullshit perpetuates, and as long as we don't challenge those in positions of authority who are lying to our faces, then I don't see how humanity comes out on top on this, okay? Because until there is transparency and openness and honesty and communication from those in positions of authority or groups in positions of authority, from the CDC to the FDA to NIH, NIMH to WHO, it doesn't matter, man. That we need integrity. We need honesty, and we need a system that doesn't just assume honesty on a trust-based system, but we actually have things put into place to make sure that our medical diagnostics are comprehensive and accurate. Okay? And that our treatments are effective. And that we're not being lied to. Because I'm sorry, but you can't make a population chronically sick and continue to lie to them and for people not to be upset. And you should be upset if you're chronically ill or a loved one is chronically ill and has no answers, because we're not getting the truth. And again, what's the motivation? Who's benefiting from the current system? Is it for the good of humanity, or is it for the good of a few people? Well, that's conjecture on my end, but that's for other people to figure out. What I did was figure out, hey, there's bad science, and many conditions have parasitic causes that are denied. And so, go ahead and build off of my work, please, because I don't have the time or the health or energy to, and I just want to share this. So, on this holiest of Sundays, Easter Sunday, I just want to say, God bless, and I hope everybody is able to have fantastic family time and community time and friend time today, because that's what life is all about. It's about connection, and it's about being authentic and genuine with the people you love. And don't overlook that, because it's really a beautiful thing. Human connection is beautiful, and when we're denied of human connection, that's tragic. It's really tragic. Anyways, happy Easter.